Which is the better SPD style power meter pedal? The Garmin XC200, where you can swap out the body for a road style body, or the SRM X-Power, the pedal from the originator of the entire bicycle power meter category? Now, both of these have their pros and cons, and I've had my share of frustrations with both systems. I prefer the X-Power simply because it's a better pedal fundamentally, and that here is job number one. In the 2 years I've been testing these, I've raced them, I've ridden them, I've done a lot of power meter comparisons against other meters, such as those from Quark and Stages, 4Eyes, and Shimano. I've tested them against smart trainers, such as the Wahoo Kicker and the Tacx Neo 2T. In this video, I'll walk you through all of that, the highs and lows of each, and show you some of the power comparisons. First, please take a second to subscribe. Now sit back and enjoy the ride. So why have a power meter in a pedal to begin with? It's a pretty tricky place to put a power meter. In my mind, it's similar to a carbon fiber clincher rim when you are using rim brakes. You're asking an awful lot of something in a very small space. Well, there's two reasons. One is, the portability of the things, whether that's swapping between different bikes you have at home or for traveling. Another benefit of having one meter across multiple bikes is, as you probably know, different power meters can read differently, and it's best to have apples to apples when you are training and racing. So having a single meter that you can use is a benefit. The other reason is simply because a traditional power meter might not work with your bike, whether due to a lack of clearance on the frame or just group set incompatibility. For the record, I prefer a power meter to be somewhere that's not a pedal. I recommend a Quark if you have a SRM group and a Stages if you have a Shimano group. You can certainly get into the weight weenie weeds with these things, and I have. For instance, a SRM Red 1x setup with the Rally pedals is slightly lighter than a Quark Red meter with my trusty XT pedals, but I'll go with that latter system all day long just because I love the performance, the durability, and basically the zero maintenance of those XT pedals. And then all the power meter has to do is be a power meter and not double as pedals. Another portability point to note with the Rally XC is that you can get this road body kit for $250 and swap these out. You certainly don't want to be doing this before every ride, but you could do it in between seasons. It takes about 15 minutes. Just need to be careful to do it on a hard surface and not be a fool like me and do it on a wire table on your deck. There's a few small pieces to keep track of. In terms of form factor, the Garmin is chunky. It's tall and it's got a higher stack height and also reduced clearance. I managed to bang this thing on the ground a number of times, including at Belgian Waffle Ride, Kansas, where I dug the pedal into the ground at a single track section and managed to break my seat post in the process. Part of the reason for the girthiness is that there are batteries inside here. That brings up one fundamental difference between these two. We've got two batteries here which will last a few hundred hours. On the X-Power, much smaller system, much closer in size to the good old Shimano SPD. And part of that is because this is rechargeable. There's a tiny little port on the side that a magnetic recharging clip snaps onto. You could argue the pros and cons of both of these. In essence, I like the concept of recharging, but in practicality, it's a pain in the butt. Much like a Shimano Di2 thing, you have to plug in the entire bike instead of taking off something and plugging it in. The downside to batteries, of course, is that you could argue that's a bit more wasteful as you're chucking out batteries every few months. In terms of power measurement, they both work reliably well. I found them to read within 2 to 4% of a slew of other meters. Testing power meters is a funny thing. It's much like democracy. It ain't perfect, but a trial by peers is the best we have. In testing the Garmin Rally pedals against the Tacx Neo 2T, I found it funny that the trainer read lower than the Garmin pedals since Tacx is now owned by Garmin. I found the Neo 2T to read lower than other power meters across the board, so it's at least consistent in its performance. And Honestly, that's about the best you can get with power meters. In my experience, I've never found meters to all read perfectly in alignment with each other, but if they read consistently in terms of how they perform to each other, that for me is a sign of a quality meter. You know, if one starts to vary compared to the other based on temperature, like for instance, when I was testing the Speedplay PowerLink pedals, I found they would drift on long winter rides when it would start cold and get a bit warmer, and then I'd stop, give them a second to recalibrate, and then they'd be back in line. You know, that was a point of weakness, for example. I didn't find that with either one of these, which seemed to handle temperature changes okay. I've used a variety of software to run power meter analysis over the years, including today's plan. The last couple of years, what I really like is the Zwift Power comparison, because it's free and it's easy, and it shows the comparisons in two main views. One, you know, power tracking over time laid on top of each other, and then critical power over the durations that you're probably familiar with if you train with power: 5 second, 10, 15, 1 minute, etc. So it's just a handy way at a glance to compare how 2 or 3 or even 4 meters compare relative to each other for the same ride. You're welcome to check out all the analysis I've done on various meters at my zwiftpower.com page under analysis. I use that Zwift Power analysis tool to confirm my suspicion when the first 2 sets of SRM pedals went sideways. In early testing, they were reading just fine, and then something happened and the power was reading like 20% low, 30% low, 40% low. And I was eyeballing this on 2 computer head units while riding, and then would, you know, get back to the house, plug in the data, and use the analysis tool to confirm that, yep, this X-Power has lost the script here. I sent first the initial set back to SRM. They sent me another set. That was good until it wasn't. Sent that one back. Then I got that third blue set about a year ago, and that set, knock on wood, has been measuring reliably. This begs the question, why would I give a company 3 chances? Well, because it's SRM is the short answer. If it was a brand new company and the first set and then the second set were faulty, I would probably at that point say, this is junky, don't mess with it. But because SRM has such a long, good reputation, I wanted to make sure that they were given a fair chance. Now let's talk about what it's like to use the things. SRM initial setup is a bit fiddly in that you have to use the SRM app and not just your head unit to configure the things. Once that's done, which takes 2 minutes perhaps, then you're good to go. Clipping in and out feels close to a Shimano pedal, maybe not quite as smooth, but more like a Shimano than the Rally. Rally pedals, super easy to get in and out of, perhaps a little too easy to get in and out of. A few times I pulled out when pedaling over washboard, so I cranked the tension down and that helped a bit. One thing I don't like about the Rally pedals is how even with the tension cranked way down, when you're riding over really rough stuff, you can feel your foot kind of slide back and forth. At the time when you want it to feel the most secure, there's just a sense that your feet are on ice. My feet have not come out since I cranked it down, but it's just not the secure feeling that you get certainly from a Shimano and that I get from the SRM system. I've asked other riders who use the Garmin Rallies. The sponsored riders say they have not had this issue. A few riders who paid for the pedals said they do feel that there's a bit of slide in the pedal. Certainly there's the price difference. Neither are cheap. A set of Garmin Rallies will run you $1,200. SRM X-Power is $1,500. You can get one-sided versions of each for a few $100s less. Again, my preference is the SRM just because it acts a lot more like the Shimano XT, my tried and trusty love. So what do you think? Have you had experience with either set or both? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and we'll keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching and enjoy the ride.
welcome the Kid at Quick Step. Couple special guests with us here today, Remco Evenepoel and Mattia Cataneo, taking part in our wafer ride out here today. If you're in the water ride, remember, you need to be lining up back in the intersection of 8th and Mass. You're going to all be starting together, but we want to make sure that we have you guys